Bellingham and the myth of Hercules, texto para narração. Down to 10 men. Away from home at the Azteca, the most hostile stadium in football, against a Mexico side that had never lost a World Cup match on that ground. In the 54th minute, England lost a defender to a straight red card. Most teams collapse from there. Instead, a 22-year-old midfielder scored twice, and England became the first team in World Cup history to beat Mexico at the Azteca. Jude Bellingham walked off that pitch and didn't celebrate like a man who'd just done something impossible. He looked like a man who'd done this before. Next stop, the quarterfinals against Norway, against Erling Haaland, the coldest, most economical predator in the tournament. Two very different kinds of hero about to collide. And 28 centuries ago, a myth was written about exactly this kind of man, the one who is punished for what he was born to be and has to keep proving again and again that he deserves it. Everyone knows the shorthand version of Hercules, the strongest man alive, 12 impossible labors, a lion's skin for a cloak. Almost nobody remembers why he actually did them. Hercules was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, and that alone made him a target for the rest of his life. Hera, Zeus's wife, hated him before he'd done a single thing wrong, simply for existing as proof of her husband's betrayal. She cursed him with a fit of madness so violent that in that state, Hercules killed his own wife and children. When the madness lifted and he understood what he'd done, he begged the gods for a way to be clean again. The oracle at Delphi gave him one. Serve a king he despised, and complete 12 labors considered impossible for any mortal. Not for fame, not for glory, as atonement for a horror that wasn't fully his fault to begin with, inflicted on him by a goddess who resented him from the moment he was born. That's the myth people leave out. Hercules wasn't chasing greatness. He was trying to prove he still deserved to exist as what he was. Jude Bellingham was born in Stourbridge, near Birmingham in 2003. He broke into Birmingham City's first team while he was still a teenager, and by 17, Borussia Dortmund had signed him, a club with a track record of turning gifted kids into superstars. He didn't need long. Within 2 seasons in Germany, he was one of the most complete midfielders in Europe. And in the summer of 2023, Real Madrid paid a fixed fee of €103 million to bring him to the Santiago Bernabeu. He was handed the number 5, a shirt carrying the weight of Zinedine Zidane's ghost inside it. 20 years old, the most expensive teenager in the club's history, walking into a dressing room of players who'd already won everything. The world was waiting to see if he'd crack. He didn't. On his La Liga debut, away at Athletic Bilbao in August 2023, he scored. A few weeks later, in stoppage time against Getafe, he scored again, the 95th-minute winner, making him only the 3rd player in Real Madrid's history, after Cristiano Ronaldo and a player named Pepillo back in 1959, to score in each of his first 4 competitive matches for the club. It looked like the easiest transition of talent the sport had seen in years. It looked, from the outside, like a demigod simply doing what demigods do. What almost nobody watching knew was that underneath the celebration, something was already broken. On the 5th of November 2023, in a match against Rayo Vallecano, Bellingham dislocated his shoulder. He later called it the most painful thing he had ever experienced, worse than previous times because this time it stayed out of place, and he couldn't force it back in himself the way he'd learned to before. It should have ended his season. Instead, he strapped it, then braced it, and kept playing. He carried Real Madrid to a La Liga and Champions League double that year. He carried England to the final of the European Championship the following summer. All of it, with a joint that could dislocate again at any moment, in a body that never got the rest it needed to heal. He later admitted, in his own words, that playing with that fear in the back of his mind, never being fully able to trust his own shoulder, kept him from playing at his real level for the better part of 2 years. He didn't have surgery until the summer of 2025. He said himself the smarter time would have been right after the Euros. He chose to keep serving instead. Hercules' labors weren't chosen either. Bellingham's were, and he chose them anyway. And exactly like the myth, the world didn't reward that sacrifice with sympathy. It punished him for the parts of himself it decided it didn't like. In December 2023, after scoring against Real Betis, he turned to the crowd and blew a kiss aimed at a fan who'd been taunting him. And the moment, nicknamed Belligol online, exploded into a story about his arrogance, not his talent. In February 2025, he was sent off against Osasuna and banned for 2 matches over what the referee described as disrespect. In the summer of 2026, in a heated moment during a warm-up friendly against Ghana, he was accused by the opposing coach of a bad reaction in a tunnel confrontation. None of it was really about a shoulder that could dislocate at any touch, or the weight of wearing Zidane's number at 20 years old, or the exhaustion of proving yourself in a new country, a new league, a new language, every single week. The world doesn't ask what a hero is carrying. It only asks why he isn't smiling while he carries it. This is the part of the Hercules story that actually matters, and it's the part almost nobody tells. The Nemean lion, the hydra, the golden apples, none of those labors were really the test. The real test was whether a man cursed by circumstances entirely outside his control could keep showing up, keep serving, keep proving himself worthy, without becoming bitter, without becoming the monster the world half expected him to be. Bellingham has done exactly that. Every accusation of arrogance sits directly on top of a story about a young man playing through actual, documented physical agony to help 2 different teams win everything they could win, and saying almost nothing about it publicly until years later. Which brings us back to the Azteca, and 10 men, and a red card, and 2 goals from a player who has spent 3 years being asked to prove he belongs. England's win over Mexico wasn't just a result. It was Bellingham doing, in 90 minutes, what he's been doing since he was 17, absorbing a crisis that wasn't his fault, and turning it into proof anyway. And now the labor gets harder. Norway awaits in the quarterfinal, led by a striker built on the exact opposite philosophy. Economy, patience, invisibility, until the moment of the strike. Bellingham is fire where Haaland is ice. Emotion where Haaland is calculation. A hero forged by trials he never asked for, facing a hero forged by trials he was born ready for. Different myths, same tournament, same stage. But Hercules' story carries a warning too, and it applies here. Even the myth's ending isn't simple triumph. After completing the 12 labors, Hercules didn't get a quiet, happy life. His story is full of more suffering, more loss, before the gods finally granted him a place among them. Redemption, in the oldest version of this myth, was never a single moment. It was a lifetime of having to prove it, over and over, to a world that was never entirely willing to forgive him for being extraordinary in the first place. Bellingham is 22. If this pattern holds, there is no single trophy, no single tournament that ends the questioning. There will always be another labor. And maybe that's what makes him worth watching more than a highlight reel ever could. Not the goals, not the number 5, but a young man who dislocated his shoulder on a football pitch, felt the worst pain of his life, and chose repeatedly for 2 years to strap it down and keep serving the people counting on him, while the world called him arrogant for celebrating too hard. That isn't the story of a demigod born untouchable. That's the story of someone who has been quietly, privately fighting a war nobody else could see, and refusing to let it stop him from carrying everyone who needed him. The Greeks never told the story of Hercules as a tale about strength. They told it as a tale about a man cursed for existing, forced to prove, labor after labor, wound after wound, that he still deserved the life he was given. 28 centuries later, a midfielder from Stourbridge dislocated his shoulder, kept it a secret, kept playing anyway, and got called arrogant for smiling through it. Bellingham is what the myth of Hercules warned us about, that the hardest labor was never the lion or the hydra or the apples. It was carrying a wound nobody could see and refusing to let the world's doubt decide who he was. Norway is next. Somewhere in Madrid and in Stourbridge, and in every place that ever doubted him, the labor continues.